from east of the Mississippi, investigating the unknown. Welcome to the show. With me today is fellow researcher Joake Haggstrom. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's night here. It's tomorrow morning there.
Yeah.
In a sense, I feel like I'm talking to a man from the future.
Well, I used to say to my old friend Jim, he was living in Hawaii. There was like a 12-hour time difference. When he got, he got to bed around 8, 9 p.m. and it was 8 or 9 a.m. for me. So it's like, now I'm taking the pass.
Yes. That's the complete inversion.
Yeah, 12, 12. But I thought it was kind of fun. And when my day started, his day ended. And we were very connected, talked a lot. I don't know if you know about Jim Chestnut.
No, but I'll remember the name and look into him.
Yeah, a real wizard. Not a real wizard like that, but
Sure.
a storyteller. Yeah.
Sure.
Really interesting guy.
I'm
I don't know.
always looking for new people to find and, read up on and maybe have them on and everything.
Yeah, he passed away
Oh, okay.
2 years ago, 3 years ago. I don't remember exactly. It was winter. But he was carrying a story called Box Saga, if you knew about that. And he has made documentaries on it. Really good production. There's a guy from Russia that produced it, but he's like the narrator.
Okay, well, I'll look into that. Maybe when we're done today, I'll get some information off of you so I can go watch that documentary. That sounds good. I'm familiar with the Box Saga. I'm hazy on the details, but I am
Yeah.
familiar with it. And I mean, I remember when that sort of came out, I guess you could say. Were you one of the guys on tinfoil hat that kind of brought that out into light?
Yep.
I thought
Yes.
so.
Yeah, it's a like a very hot rock subject, especially for those who, you know, I don't like to throw it in the face of people, but I love the history and details of the Book Saga. There's a really good book on it that I can recommend.
It does get controversial.
Yeah, but everything is controversial, you
Yes, but
know.
with Box Saga, it gets controversial out of the clear blue sky. Like you're going along and you're learning. You're like, wow, this is so wholesome, and then boom, it gets like,
Yeah.
whoa, what just happened here? It gets weirdly sexual and everything. But like the legend part of it is very unique.
Mm.
Right? Is that the word for it? Because when you look at other creation myths, I'll just throw that blanket statement out there. When you look at other stories and legends to do with creation, I don't necessarily think Bach Saga has many parallels to the other.
Well, I think it does.
Okay.
Uh, I think a lot of mythologies, at least, or, the more pantheon-based cultures around the world, mythology like the Greeks, and you can find it also like in Vietnam, in Buddhism, and, you can find like pieces and stories that correlates with the Book Saga in many ways.
I
And
need to
that's what's,
brush up on it again because I'm hazy. Like I said, I'm hazy on the details, and I need to be real careful with what I say because if those connections are there to the other myths and legends,
it
um,
is.
yeah,
Well, it's sort of it's like the more primordial. It's kind of a more simpler it's quite simple actually. The mythology, or it's so straightforward. It's no like so many metaphors in that sense. It's more like very primordial, I would say. It's basic, and from the basicness you can expand the understanding the more you dwell on it. But it's based on language, so it's kind of fixated in a system that is sort of flowering out. Yeah, I don't know. It's strange. It's a very nature based. That is, I think it's very what do you call it? It's made for humans. Very humanistic.
When it comes to the language portion of that story, is it one of those things where the it's based on runes and or maybe like a root language where if you go far back enough, some of the symbols may have been, I don't know, sounds or numbers or something like that?
The runes. That's where I started. I'm living in Sweden.
Yes.
I grew up in the very north part of Sweden here, and uh, I got into like when in my early 20s. I'm 33 now, so I've been doing this for like 12, 13 years or something like that. And I was like a seeker, and I remember when I was a kid going to Egypt and seeing all those not the pyramids. I went to the temples, Karnak temple and Hatshepsut temple, and seeing all these carvings and wondering like, who are those people who built this? And I remember the guide that we had. He was like, he was also from Sweden. He was like a charter. What do you call it? It was a charter trip, and he wanted to talk about not the pyramids, but those temples and stuff. He was so into the Egyptian lore, but he couldn't talk about it without this license. And I was like, what? You can't talk about those things without a license?
Hmm.
And he could get in trouble for talking about it without having this kind of permission. And I was like 12, 13 years old at this point and was like, what's wrong? You know,
I
I
think
thought,
that comes down from the state dictating to Zahi Hawass, who I think it just kind of spreads out from there. I think they all kind of answer to that one archaeologist over there, or the head of antiquities, I guess is what they call him. And it seems like he, he answers to directly to the government.
yeah,
And they lock down what they can talk about, right?
yeah. And I thought that was so strange, a 13-year-old boy,
Hmm.
I was so seeded with this skepticism about, yeah, what's going on here. And then I sort of had that attitude also here in Sweden. There's a lot of history here, but it's so vague. If you go to a museum here, there's so many gold artifacts that you can watch and bronze. It's not a plundered culture in that sense. We have so much of the legacy of the past in our museums and the archives here. And in the earlier or the later years, I've been very interested in Swedish history, but that only sort of branches out from this interest in mythology and with ancient languages and so.
Well, let me ask you this. I think it's interesting that you went to Egypt and you actually ended up with a Swedish guide. Is that
Yeah.
because of the language?
No, he wasn't the guide, the official guide. He was like if you go on a charter trip, you have like this travel master or travel
Ah, mhm.
agent, and he wanted to join us on this trip. He like we paid a certain amount of money, and he gathered a bus with a transport, even military transport at that point. So we went to all those places, and he was talking about it on the bus.
Well, what do you think? he left out? What do you think that he wanted to tell you guys that he couldn't without that license?
I don't
In
remember clearly.
in
Is this?
retrospect, what do you think that that might be? Have you found answers like that?
I haven't been so into the Egyptians, to be honest. If
Well,
you
that's
know a
okay. I
guy,
was just
do,
curious.
do you know a guy called Michael Tesarion?
Yes, I
Yeah,
know of him. He does Unslaved.
yeah. I've been there a couple of times talking about mythology also, or the book saga.
He's an interesting guy, man.
Yeah, yeah. I've been in contact with him for like 10 years maybe. And he told me like should focus in your own backyard instead of like all over the world. And I took that advice. So I started to like go into the more roots of the Swedish and Finnish, Danish, sort of the Scandinavian history and culture. And it blew my mind, man.
Yeah, that's great advice. Look in your own backyard. I
Mm,
think I've said it a couple of times on here. If I haven't, I'll say it again. It's a good thing to do. You're going to find something no
yep.
matter where you are. And like here, I've got my backyard is wild too. I've got a almost a 40-foot an almost 50-foot statue of Athena
Oh,
in Nashville. It's in the Parthenon, and they say that they built this Greek Parthenon in the late 1800s for one of those World's Fairs like events.
in
But
which state are you situated?
Tennessee,
Oh, cool.
and I'm not trying to throw us off topic because I want to get back to what you're talking about here, but there was a pyramid there at one time as well. I've got a picture of it. There was a pyramid next to this Greek Parthenon, and there's this, a 50-foot statue of this goddess here. And it's like, what was going on? And the official record is, oh, we just built this for this fair. But I
Nah,
also have articles that show that there were tunnels under Nashville that were found that had a sarcophagus and old vases and all this old all these old artifacts. So I don't know if it's like this in Sweden, but the issue here that I'm starting to uncover is that a lot of our major cities today have been cities for a very long time. They say founded by, they have a founded by date. You can go to Wikipedia and you can see, okay, all right, so Chicago was founded in 1760 or whatever. Well, no, Chicago's been around way longer than that, and the we're just missing the details on that. But when you look at a city here like St. Louis, people have been living there for thousands of years
yeah.
because of the Cahokia mounds and the mound builders, and there were people there before the Native Americans settled in the region. So I don't know, is Sweden like that?
The difference between Sweden and America is that Sweden isn't really a conquered nation in that sense. I just thinking about like the three big empires you had over in America and Mexico, the Aztec Inca and the Aztec Inca and what's the last?
Mayan.
Mayan, exactly. So all those cities could probably be like founded on Aztec Inca Mayan
Some of them
cities.
were.
And
Some
these
of
were
them were.
huge. They were into agriculture really early also.
Big
So
time.
that
I've got a book called Conquest of Mexico. That's part of the title. I don't remember the whole title, but it in the book it talks about the Spaniards coming over in the 1500s. They went through Mexico City back when it was, I believe it was the Aztec Empire, and they had pyramids and they had all these huge grandiose structures, and they were they built the city on water, almost like an Atlantis type of a situation, because where Mexico City sits today, it's in this huge lake bed that they've somehow drained the water from. But back in the 1500s, when these guys were coming over here on boats, and, dodging arrows. When they got to Mexico City, they found this very elaborate, very exquisite uh, mega city with pyramids.
Yeah, but I think that's the case. In his, it's like the modern history mind want to picture the past like we were like dummies, and we didn't achieve anything back in the you know past, like the modern human,
Yeah.
especially before like the more Christian minds. But that's interesting with Sweden. We haven't been under the Catholic rule for long. It's like two or three, about 300 years. So we are not so tainted by the grip of the Catholic or the religious mind, for good or bad. But
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
it's rather more for the good.
I think it's for the good as well. I think the Catholics came through and they had Europe in a stronghold, and it was some of the worst times in history for people when you look at the Dark Ages and stuff like that. Now, I don't
Yep.
know specifically if Sweden was involved in that, but
Yep, it was.
is it a situation where there were these was Sweden like an esoteric nation with like maybe a very strong family running it, and then the Catholics came in? Is that what happened?
Yep.
Were they pagan families?
Or I could say like this: when the Christian came, they they started to come like emissaries or like friendly toned, and they killed. They made like this shady takeover. They started with taking out all the sages, and it's very easy to disrupt a pagan society because it's so hierarchical. You have like, and there's no writing system, so all the knowledge is contained within the humans. The the runes or the script system, rune script. That's the masculine version of. They had like two writing system. The modern writing system is more like curved. It's a more female oriented symbol, but they didn't have a writing system. It was like symbols. So one rune can be like a pictogram or a glyph that contain a lot of knowledge in the combinations. So you have like rune cards that were interpreting runes or messages, you could say. But all the knowledge and association is within the human. So when you take out the people with the knowledge, it can go very sour very quickly.
Mhm.
So that what's happened, and Sweden became like a scattered nations. Not even a nation; it was more like a kingdom, you could say. Have different provinces or land, we call it, where you have like it's a very pyramid structured society. You had like the top priest class, or the in Sweden in this case they had like the king is like the top, and he was like the to be more into details. There are different kind of pagan system. They had like the more original pagan system, which the Finns had, where you had a pantheon of 12 sons and 7 daughters who ruled. So that's like an entire family construct. But when Sweden was founded, it was like a scandal. Denmark and Sweden, they were sort of a scandal construct when it was founded, because the king was the sole, you know, the head of the kingdom instead of this pantheon. But it's more like I don't know what the purpose is, but there's a story about this in the book Saga that I'm just speaking from mythology, but it sort of adds up really good. We can see that the system is like that. Because when Gustav Vasa took power in the 1500s, he kicked out like the Catholics, and it was totally forbidden to even have association with Catholics. And he sort of wanted to roll back to the more hedonistic pagan system, but with a modern twist, you could say.
Did you want to get into that some today? The box saga?
Sure, if you want, but it's I've been doing so many programs on it. I don't know if you should repeat it, but whatever
I,
you like to talk about, man, it sort of weaves into the Swedish history, but the Swedish history is so interesting because it's connected to like America in a big way, and it's connected to all over Europe and the world, you could say.
yeah,
They,
I think so too. I think that I think that people from Scandinavia have been coming here for a lot longer
yeah, the
than
Vikings, but
y-
there's also Danes, and
yes,
I,
absolutely. Because a boat is what used to connect our countries, a
hmm
ship. And there's all this evidence that's not being discussed today regarding how long man has been able to sail. And, I think it's time for historical reckoning that doesn't involve Columbus and pilgrims and that whole story because people were coming here before the Columbus and the pilgrims.
yeah,
And these were real people. Some of these people from Scandinavia, they're real people with real mythology, and some of them even buried their boats for us to find. We're finding the Norse boats buried in great condition on these islands. And, the Norse and the Vikings, they didn't just come here, they also went as far as the Middle East because goods from the Middle East have been found in some of these like digs and excavations in some of these caves and some of these places where the Vikings left some of their stuff hidden almost in like a time capsule for us to find it. And they also left their inscriptions in stone.
well, the Vikings is just the Viking era is just like a time period when the pagans went to war with the religions, in my understanding. Before that, they were more like, as I see it, all of Europe, all the way down to yeah, where we can draw the line around Greece and Italy and those borders to the Mediterranean Sea. They were all like connected to this huge pagan culture. Not like a empire in that sense. It has like even Egypt was connected to this influence. So Athens and Rome, we know that they were pagans in Greece.
Mhm.
So
And this is before Rome
before,
took over. Is that what you're saying?
well, I would say that Rome was conquered it sort of collapsed in the Roman Empire when it was pagan, collapsed around 300 after Christ.
300 AD. Okay.
And those Colosseum structures is a very pagan
Mhm.
circus. Uh, well,
Well,
I
when
have
do
to.
you think the switch happened? When do you think that it went from pagan to no longer being pagan?
I think it's graduate,
Gradual.
but at some point it has to be like a day of reckoning, I guess. Like in Sweden,
Yeah.
officially we had like 1050 in Sweden, or all both Sweden and Finland became like Christians. It has to be like that. It has to be graduate, but you can see how the wave is coming from the south. England is around 800, I think. Russia also. So it has been all those conflicts. In the meantime, you hear stories about like Ragnar Lothbrok and Björn Ironside, and they were merely like the last battle for the pagans on like an official scale. It's called Battle of the Hastings when they used the British towards the Swedes and the Finns.
Yeah.
So they have always been using other cultures to fight for them, you know. It takes maybe 3 generations to insert the mindset, but give it a couple of 100 years and you have result.
Does the Etruscans fit into this at all for you? Have you
Haven't
looked
heard
into
of.
them?
I was gonna come to like the battle, you know, on the surface level with the sword and torch, you know,
Hmm.
when that came to an end, the pagan rulers, like the aristocrats, you could say, in Europe, they went underground and they had been creating those networks called like the Knights Templars and sort
Yeah,
of those kind of orders. Because if you just look at the name Templar, it's involving temples,
sure.
temple, the Knights of the Temple. And the Christians, they have like those churches.
Cathedrals.
Yeah,
The Christians had cathedrals and the pagans had temples.
yeah, very simple. And I actually found a lodge, a Templar lodge, dating from around 900 in Sweden. So that's long before like crusades and stuff like that. And the
Mm.
use of flags and symbolism on the tapestry that originates from Denmark and Scandinavia also. So I sort of stretch, or you can sort of track the Templar and the Freemasonry system to Scandinavia also.
Do you think that that was around 1050 that all that went underground
Yeah,
because of the church?
yeah. So they had to like organize themselves in this way with symbolism and because all the Templar symbolism are very pagan, and the people picture those very bad today with you know that's a long if you go further in history, it's easy to infiltrate a sort of this kind of system also, because if you take out the head, the those underneath wouldn't notice.
Absolutely.
So I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And there's a famous why I'm so focused on the Gustav Vasa and the Vasaätt. There's a Vasa king line. They originate from the old Finnish king line. Also, Finland was the center of the pagan structure in Europe. It was like the
Finland.
yeah, they call it the hell.
I don't want to get you off track, but was Sweden and Finland wasn't that once one place?
It's yeah, it was one country, but they call it like Livland. Finland
Okay.
was its own like district or province. I don't know the correct name in English, but
That makes sense. Providence.
because
Providence.
yeah, but if you look at Gustav Vasa's sons, Eric the 14th, he was king of Sweden, and his brother Johan, he was what do they call it? He was the head of Finland, you could say. But they were, they were governing both. This family was governing. They were placing those important people on
Hmm.
important places, you could say.
What about,
But
go
hmm?
ahead. Sorry. I was going
No,
to
but
ask about Burger.
Berger,
Burger Jarl?
yeah, Birger Jarl, yes, he's the founder of Stockholm.
Yes.
He's the founder of Stockholm. And Stockholm, they moved the capital of Sweden from Uppsala to Stockholm around 1250,
Mm.
sort of later. Yeah, but Stockholm became like this new merchandise capital, you could say. It's like the Venice of Europe, because you can go with boats in there and you have all those. It's like a what do you call them? Geopolitical strategic lock. You can access all those river systems that goes to the two big Great Lakes in. You can do
Mhm.
everything with boats from Stockholm. It's and all the cities, major cities in Sweden are river based. for the Viking ships,
Yes.
those kind of ships. Those ships are really incredible because you can go on vast open oceans and you can also go on shallow waters with them because you have the biggest what do you call it, archipelago in the world in between Finland and Sweden. Very hard to navigate those waters
Hmm.
if you don't have knowledge about it. So it was kind of easy to stay hidden and escape the Catholic vessels because you needed ships to control Sweden and Finland, but they didn't have the resources for it. So, and we have those huge forests. Finland and Sweden is only forests, and mountains, but it's it has been really hard for outside rulers before to control geographically because of the winters, and you can't really, it's hard to manage, you could say. So they can just, if they trying to, you know, get into the archipelago, it's really easy to like
Hmm.
ambush and just, it's easy to control.
Yeah.
I think Stockholm has never been conquered by force, at
Incredible.
least. It's a strategic
They did
genius
the
position.
same here. They built all the major cities are built on waterways, on the, like you said, Great Lakes and major rivers.
Mm. It's all about the logistics. And you can track this even up to today, with the kind of money system that you are using in a nation and how you are doing it logistically. Also with information, the information system has very been a very important part also to control. But the money system has always been like the key for found as a foundation for a kingdom. But to go back to this Gustav Vasa, I think it's so fascinating. But in the book Saga mythology, they originate from the old king line stemming out from Finland, and they are called like the bock or the goats. The goat symbol is the highest symbol for the pagans, you could say. It's a very respected and high symbol because it's the symbol of the origin of man in their sense, you could say.
Hmm.
But the goat symbol is also like they had like two kings in the old pagan system, and they were called like the sun bock and the moon bock, or the sun goat and the moon goat, having different kind of functions in the system, but they were the bock or the goat that represented the moon. He was called Ra, the king. And you can see in Egypt they sort of have the Ra, but it's symbolizing the sun. So that's like a bastardization of what a king. But it's a small detail. But in this more heathen system, it's a kind of big deal because if you represent the sun, you're like a procreator. You are you're carrying the sun, or yeah. But the moon, he has the say. He control the ebb and flow, you could say.
Yes.
So it's very nature based in incorporated with astrology and
Yes. I was going to say it's astrology. It even correlates with alchemy some.
Mm.
In alchemy, uh, especially in the old alchemy, what you find is a lot of, they call it Sol and Luna, and they factor that in to everything just about.
yeah. So a lot of symbolism is very connected to the heavenly bodies, you could say.
Yes.
So it's like a representation on Earth. If you represent the sun on Earth, quite a big duty. But anyway, to point out, Finland, their capital is called Helsinki, uh, Hell Sing Key. It's like the singing the key to hell. And we know all about hell. It's a very cold place. It's the worst place you can go to. But it's part true in this system, or in the mythology. Finland was the exact North Pole before the tilt of the planet in this story. So it's like the original capital of the world, you could say,
Yes.
in their like mythology. The
That sounds
first,
like Hyperborea a little bit.
yeah, but that's like I can make it very short. In the book Saga, they talk about three Ragnarök, also Ragnarök. And Ragnarök linguistically, you had a Ragna, alltså you had a Ragnar, but the render is is like the destruction of a system or a change in the structural system.
I
It
think that
affect,
we would think of that word as like apocalypse.
yeah, it is an apocalypse, but to more specific, rök means smoke. It's fire. It's something is, you know, and Ra representing the ruler system or the ebb and flow or the movement of the water, you could say. But the word in itself sort of hints about a destruction of a system. Like the COVID situation that we had was
Mhm.
like a mini Ragnarök, you could say. But they talk about those three major Ragnaroks, and the first is the tilt of the planet, because we know that our Earth is like tilted. I know this sort of upset people who thinks the Earth is flat,
Mhm.
but in this mythology, the Earth is round,
Sure.
and yeah, that's my understanding too. To be clear,
Hmm.
but that's the first Ragnarök, and it brought the Ice Age into being. So all the top of the oh, you have to, if you look at before the Ragnarök, the Earth was, you know, pointing straight. So we had like 24-hour a day sunlight up in the north, like we have on the summers here. We have 24-hour sunlight. So it will be 24-hour sunlight all the year around here,
Hmm.
and tropical. And after the tilt of the planet, we got those seasons. So that's when they made those, playing cards. You have or a deck of cards. It has 52 cards representing 52 weeks, and you have four sets representing four seasons. Two dark, two red. The two red representing the spring and summer and half of the year.
Yeah. I don't know this card game, but it sounds great.
No, but it's the original, the original playing card games that you have all over, which you
Oh,
play poker with.
oh, there's 52 in the poker deck.
Yeah, no, the original.
Okay.
Also the poker, it's not a poker deck. You have the from ace up to
Yeah.
10, and then you have the jar, or it's called it's a G, a J.
Joker.
Yeah, no, not the Joker. Haven't you ever played the original playing card?
Ah,
Those
I've
the
played.
original set.
Okay, no,
Eh,
maybe I haven't. I guess I haven't. I've played some card games before.
but it's this original that they play poker with, they play blackjack, they play
Yeah.
all those kind of in the casinos with it.
Okay. Everybody who's listening, I'm sure will know what you're talking about. So
Yeah, but this is a really, really old kind of system, you
yeah,
could
that's
say.
fascinating. The breakdown of that. It's and like I think that this Axis thing could have really happened and probably did really happen. I mean, there's proof and there's evidence that Alaska was tropical not very long ago.
Yeah, but yeah, they find like oil, and now they're discussing oil, but they are drilling oil in the North Sea, up over Sweden. So there's so many evidence. It's clear that we had an ice age at least. If you go around here in Sweden and look at the bedrock, it's so scraped, and has been. You can see that the ice sheet has been sliding south.
Mm.
Because if you're like a fisherman like me, this is a really good knowledge because all the reefs are on the southern part. All the reefs are always on the south part of the islands because of this ice, kilometers of ice that has been slowly moving and polishing the landscape. So after the ice age, there was like a barren wasteland, you could say, no trees, no nothing. So the people who has been living up here, they have been cultivating uh, everything you can see, like all the plants and trees and stuff. It's all like originating from human activity. It's quite interesting. All the kinds of, we have no toxic or venomous snakes. We have no venomous animals at all.
Mhm.
And all the plants have like a purpose medicinally. So if you go out in the forest, it's incredible if you have this knowledge of about herbs and what you can gather because it's sort of thought. It's like it's custom made, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
It's
like that
interesting.
here, actually, with when it comes to herbs. I mean, a field here in the South, in the American South, will have lots of medicinal plants, lots of plants there, as you said, for a purpose.
Mm.
As long as you know what the purpose is.
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Now,
And
now
and
over
this
here, it's lost information because of it's a long story, but the the technocratic shadow elites have pretty much made everybody stupid to medicinal plants. People don't know anymore. It's
no, but it has a good reason because the Catholics they were really hard on this. When they came to Sweden and Finland and wherever they went, it was punishable by death to even make a cup of tea. Because you could be deemed a wizard or a witch.
yeah,
So all those witch burnings and stuff is mostly connected to like, herbs and more pagan stuff. They were really, really into uh, what you could say, herbology and the medicinal. Everything was about plants and stuff. They even cultivate. Finland today, even still today, cultivate and sort of make adjust plants. I would say like the fir, not the fir, the fir tree and the tall. What do you call it? The porcupine tree, maybe. Those evergreen trees?
yes, pine trees.
Yeah. In the book Saga, they claim that those trees are man-made also for the Arctic climate, to
Like
make to have for fire, and they can the
yeah,
the
I know what you're
pine.
saying.
Yeah,
They're
the
like
pine.
engineered for a
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
like corn. They say that the Aztecs made corn. It wasn't a natural plant, but they needed something to cultivate so they could feed all these people, so they could feed cities of people. So they figured out a way to engineer corn.
Hmm. I think that's very true. That's like what man did before, very attuned to nature and had a keen sense. But it's interesting if you think about when this ice age period, if you go back to the Ragnaroks, the first Ragnarok brought the ice age, and if you look at the book Saga, when Helsinki or Hell, Finland, was the capital of the heathen world, they lost the connection to the head, so to speak, the rest of the world, and everyone thought that they died, but they were like dark skin and brown skinned people, tropical people. Everyone in on the world, according to this story, was like one culture and one race of people, you could say.
Hmm.
So when they were disconnected from the cultural and spiritual uh, birthplace or capital, we got this separation, like the story of Tower of Babel, almost. That the human species was separated into different, and sort of cultivated different kind of cultures over time. So we had it split, but they survived in the Gulf of Finland, inside of this ice, like trapped for a very long time. I, I think they say like 50 million years. They claim that the human race is over 100 million years old. Uh,
And so 50 million of that, according to the Box Saga, this group of people was trapped.
Inside of the ice, and they cultivated they developed agriculture and domestication of animals to survive the winters. Of course, they had like more summer times because of the Gulf Stream keeping the waters clear. So they had some kind of opportunity to grow food, and like the pig was a creation and the cow was a creation. And this is why the cow is so holy in India. But that's another story. This Krishna character is said to originate from Finland.
So that's very interesting that you've got lore about this group of people who found themselves in this predicament where they are trapped in an ice world.
Yep.
So they have to figure out ways. Uh, they have to be very intuitive, and they have to engineer, and they have to figure out how to do things that they normally wouldn't be
Yep.
doing. It's just kind of like, it reminds me of that movie where Matt Damon is trapped on Mars, and he has to learn how to grow crops on Mars. So he has to relearn how to do everything. He has to figure little things out. And it also reminds me of, again, Hyperborea.
The- yeah, but if you look at the Finland, they had their like national symbol is a sauna, and that's a system that they also developed. The sauna, you can go into the sauna. It's very warm, and it's like a mimication of the
The
tropical
sauna, yes.
climate. Yeah, it's the mimication of a tropical climate. So
Yeah.
this is like the first system, because you have like a system of stones. The system, sten means stone, system, or the system. It's like a machinery almost. So this more materialistic and survival based mechanical thinking also I think originates from this isolation. You have this this group of people living very isolated in a desert, cold desert, you could say almost. And those pine trees, they are called gran in Swedish, and they can grow on the granite. They don't need any soil. So it's in the linguistics.
Hmm.
You can grow the trees directly on stones, because this ice, when it slided away or slided south, the end of the ice age, it scraped all of Sweden and Finland clear of all its soil. So they needed trees to grow on the rocks, so they later could burn them, so it became soil. So all the soil in Sweden and Finland is quite unique. Uh, it's all there, it's interesting.
That is very interesting. So the dirt's all gone, so you have to figure out how to grow trees on stone so then you can it sounds like an alchemical process here. So then you can take the trees, cut them down, burn them, and what's left becomes your basis for soil again. From
Yeah.
the ashes becomes the soil, right?
Yep.
That's alchemy, man.
Yep.
100%.
Or geomancy,
Sure.
almost.
It's a yeah, it's a merger of the two.
But to come to this is like when the ice started to slide, they had been making preparation on an island called Gotland or Gotland. The Gotland is a very important island still today. It's totally untouched by the ice age, you could say. And no ice has been like scraping or polishing that island. So in the third Ragnarök, they had to move from Helsinki to Gotland. Like Helsinki is their holy land. The whole there's a hole there to Valhalla also, which, there's a archeological component to this also, which has been driving people for, they started the dig in 1984, I think. It's called the Lemminkainen Temple. They claim that that's like the gate of Valhalla. It's a spiral cone going down deep into the earth with caverns upon caverns with old artifacts from the old pagan world stored inside of this mountain. Uh,
What?
yeah. So that's like a
What's it
treasure hunt.
called? What's the name of this mountain?
A Lemminkainen
Oh,
temple.
Lemminkainen, the Lemminkainen Temple.
Yeah.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
So they closed this temple in 984, I think, when uh, when the Catholics, so they didn't want the Catholics to find this. So they covered it with mud and sealed the temple. And then
It's
the
a temple made of rock, is it not?
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
they were expert in moving stones, so they could they had those techniques to move big megaliths, you could say.
Yes.
But they have been there was like an agreement that this temple couldn't be open until 1984. So that was Ior Bak. He was a descendant of this old royal house of Finland who had been carrying those mythologies and stories. And it was his obligation to open the temple or at least spread this information about the temple.
When you say there was an agreement not to open it until 1984, do you mean that there was a prophecy?
Yeah, that was, you could say a prophecy.
It was
But
written that it would not be revealed until 84, perhaps?
not written, but avtalat, you could say. Promised by speech.
It was an oral tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they haven't been, so they are trying every summer to get that temple open. Jim, he was the dig master number one.
Have you
Jim,
been?
no, I never been there.
Okay.
It's quite close to me, but I never been there for some reason. But anyway, this temple, Jim told me he had the title dig master. He was a wealthy American coming to Finland after a long journey around the globe. He has a couple of questions he wanted answered before he died, and he had a lot of money, and he went like all over the world like a seeker, and he found this guy in India talking about Bok Saga or Finnish mythology. And that
It's a long ways away.
yeah, so he started to spend his summers in Finland, Jim Chestnut, and he was became so obsessed by this mountain. And I remember he talking about Eeyore said that there were three stone blocks blocking the entrance. So they had like a drill. Eeyore said there was three stones in different kind of materials that were sealed off in the entrance. And there was a water lock in there making you can flood the temple also, the entrance to the temple. So yeah, the first thing was they needed to get past those three stone blocks, and he was so amazed when he started to drill into the mountain. It was just like a big rock that they started to dig and shovel out dirt, you know. But when they met this stone, he said the drill just went like woof, and they pulled out a stone block, and then they found another stone block and a third in different materials. And inside of that, to the left on the rock, there was a rock carving of a checkerboard.
Very Masonic.
Yep. So, you know, from that point, there was no return.
Yeah.
So they have been trying. The problem with this temple is that it's water inside of the temple because of this water lock. Um, it has sort of eroded the rocks, so it becomes like a cement
Was the
inside of the.
was the water lock put there in place for a reason to
Yeah, to
flood it,
flood it. Yeah,
like some Indiana Jones
yeah,
stuff?
yeah,
Wow.
exactly. But all this water over time has become like cement because of you know, like dust from the mountain, or you know, it's a
Sure.
process. Yeah, so they have been blowing with dynamite there a lot. To There's pictures of it. Today they have come quite far there. I know that they had been doing some what they call it, the ground penetrating radars also,
Mhm.
and they see like caverns and stuff in there. So there's something there.
L- Lemon Cannon. How do you say the temple?
Lemminkainen temple.
Lemminkainen is a
It,
cave in the village of Gumbostrand, located in
yeah.
Sippo, Finland. It's said to contain an underground temple depicted in the Bok Saga.
Mm.
This information is somewhat out there. I wouldn't trust all of this.
Yeah, but if you look at Jim Chestnut on the YouTube when he goes to the temple, and you know he goes to he's in India in one episode. There's three episodes or three documentaries that are really interesting to watch. Maybe you can put a link in the.
Yes, remind me and I'll do that. The
Yeah.
name of the cave refers to a figure in Finnish mythology and one of the main characters in the Kalevala.
Yep. Kalevala is like Finland's national epic. It's it's a compilation of stories. When Finland broke free from Sweden, you could say, in the 1800s, they needed a national identity. So there was this guy going around from village to village and asking about, you know, old stories and you know, it's a compilation of the population of Finland's like folk tales, the Kalevala.
Yes, I'm aware of it. I want to read it. I haven't read that yet, but I want to.
I can say that Tolkien, he was obsessed with that.
Yeah. I think Hitler was as well.
Yeah, Hitler, he was very interested about Finland. He had such a respect for it. He was called Mannerheim. He became the president, but he created the White Army that stood up against the Russians. That's an incredible story, to be honest. Finland managed to fight off the Soviet
Defend
Union.
off of Russia. 'Cause yeah, if you look at the map and you look at Finland and then you look at Russia, it's behemoth. It's
Yep,
so huge. And all that stands between Finland and Russia is at the time was just imaginary border.
yep. Finland doesn't have a big population at all.
Yes.
It's incredible. You know, my
I have no idea how they pulled that off. I've always wondered how the Finnish fought off the Russians.
there's a really good book about it. This Gustav Mannerheim, he was the one who organized and sort of led the defense. And there's a really good book, about 600 pages on it. But I read it, and it was, I think it's a lot of sleeves in the Finns and the Swedes. They have always been so technological. They have been having such development within the different kind of technologies, like for instance, the telecommunication aspect. I think this was a key. They had radar and all these kind of technologies that you need in warfare. They have been so superior throughout time.
I find
Even
it
even even since the Viking Age, those Viking ships, they were so vast, or highly technology. What do you
Mhm.
call it? They were so far in their, what do you call it? I don't know.
They were
My
advanced for their
Yeah, very
time.
very advanced, and that has never sort of died. But
Do you
that's
think
what
that goes back to this uh these people being more these peoples are more in touch with nature all the way back. They're
I,
more
f-
in tune with their surroundings.
I don't know how. I think it's a cultural thing, very industrious, and I think it originates from the Ice Age period when we had to, it's a harsh. There's a lot of time sitting indoors, and just think. There's no much distractions before. Now we have the computers, of course, that can entertain us, and the televisions. But imagine 400 years ago sitting in a cold house, tending the fire all day. 6 months of year is like darkness and cold outside. Of course, you did some things outside, like chop some wood and maybe that sort of activities, but a lot of carpeting, and time to think.
Yes.
But I think, especially during the Second World War and the First World War, I, this comes to my latest interest about Swedish history, actually, from the 1800s and up. It's incredible to see what kind of the family that took over Sweden in the 1800s. They are called Wallenberg, and they are like they come from the East India Company structures. They made their power in Sweden for through the companies. The companies grew stronger than the king, you could say, or the nation, almost, because of the opium trades, and there was so much going on there. But their family motto, who took over, are att verka utan att synas. It means to act or to operate without being noticed.
Mm.
So that has been like the credo for Sweden and Finland and Norway for 200 years. You are the hidden hand in
Mm.
everything, and that's still going on today.
That family is very interesting. They had a hand in the opium trade. I did not know
Yep,
that.
yep.
Did
They had monopoly over the opium trade.
they also had the heavy water, right?
Yep,
See, that would have
monopoly over the heavy water. That's why
that
the Germans even came here. They went to Norway.
the Nazis wanted that heavy water for
Yep,
their atomic.
yep. But
Yeah.
imagine the the power you hold when you have the key component to nuclear.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's the they use the heavy water for the nuclear plants, and if you're a Wallenberg and you like is I don't know how to ask this question, but I think the question is for me is like is because I know that Sweden was never brought under Nazi rule. The Nazis never invaded Sweden. Do you think that maybe that had something to do with this family And
Yeah, 100%. I think the Nazi ideology, it came from Sweden.
wow.
Uh, we had this institute down in, I think it's Uppsala or whatever, but the Nazi ideology grew here before it even came to Germany. And this family, Wallenberg, they were on the trial in America for, there's a deal called the Bosch deal, Bosch-affären, we say. The Americans found documents in Germany, in Berlin, in the ruins. They had every finger in the industries and, the concentration camps, and Sweden was a part of all of this fucking mess down there in Germany.
Wow.
There's a really good book on this actually.
Yeah. What is
I
it?
haven't read it all, but David Irving, have you heard about this guy?
Yes, I've heard the name.
So prosecuted, man. He was I think he was a journalist, or his first book was called the Dresden on something, the attack
Reston.
on the bombings of Dresden, I think.
Hmm. David
David
Irwin.
Irving. Yeah.
Irving. I've heard the name.
He has a book called Hitler's War.
All
It's
right.
about 1,000 pages. But that book became so controversial.
Is that about what we're talking about here? Is it to do with Sweden and their involvement with the
Well, not
Nazis?
as I haven't read the book in it. I have only listened to interviews with David Irving. So I haven't gone into those kind of details, but it's on my shelf. It's a very rare book also. I think you can't, it's quite hard to get. You can see it. Look here. You can see
Yes.
Hitler's War.
Yes.
It's like tome, you can see.
Hmm.
But this book, he talks about all this kind of, he basically means that we got it all wrong about the Second World War. Not saying that they are saints, but that there are more to it. But anyway, it's kind of known that Sweden has been involved with Germany
Can we
in
go
this.
back to that family for a second? The Wallenbergs,
Sure.
are they still around?
Yeah, yeah, they are on the fifth generation now. I think their dynasty is in their strongest position right now.
Wow.
I was making a documentary about this power because what's really been on my mind is the power shift that happens. The Vasa dynasty, or the Vasa line, that originates from this old pagan families, the Vasaet, they were having power from the 1540 something, 23 maybe, all the way to the assassination of Gustav III in the late 1700. And what happened here is so interesting. All this went down at the same time as the Civil War in America and the French Revolution in France. And the Swedes were like they are seen in every conflict on major level. There's a guy called Axel von Fersen who was the field marshal of Sweden during this time, and he answered to Gustav III. And he tried to make an escape plan for the French family in France during the France Revolution. But when that failed, he went to America, and he was supporting, or was a key component in installing George Washington into helping him with the Civil War. But there are not many documents on it. It's very like shady. If you go to the American history, they found this Axel von Fersen's diaries in France. For like, it was a real coincidence that they found his diaries, because every day he wrote diaries. So there's a guy in Sweden, an historian, who made a compilation, or he made a history book based on his diaries that I have been reading. It's really interesting. And you can see there's a painting when they declare Declaration of Independence, and you can see this Axel von Fersen standing just behind George Washington.
Wow.
So, and they took the same money system. We had dollar in Sweden at that time, and it was gold based dollar, and then you got dollar.
Yes.
It's the same. It's
Yeah.
this paper note, the green paper note.
You know,
Swe Sweden was the first using paper notes for money, the printing of money in that sense. Before that, it was only coins.
that's big. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's big information.
And the first central bank is Sweden. So that's like the original central bank of the world, situated in Stockholm.
When people think banking, they think Switzerland,
Yeah, but that's like
but
a satellite.
we're saying it goes back to Sweden.
Yep. But mhm, the the most important power tool today is the telecommunication and power lines.
Do they own that? Wallenberg's own that?
Yeah, I think 65% of the world. Um,
They own that much of the
yeah,
telecommunications.
all of America. Trump even mentioned it.
Do they go by the name Wallenberg today or have they changed the
Yep,
name?
they go by
Wow.
that name.
Do they do they own Pfizer?
Pfizer.
Are
I
they
don't
tied
know.
in with the pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, yeah, they have this. They what is called? You know, let's
I do
wait.
know a lot of the pharmaceuticals, some of them came from Germany. Some of the influence came out of Nazi Germany.
There's one of those.
I,
AstraZeneca.
okay, nice.
But in some ways, for the I think it's against the rules to have complete monopoly over something. Like you need to have different kind of flavors to make it more like accepted. But they have their finger in everything. But they were making a genius move because they tied all their money into the state of Sweden. They have like those foundations they called Wallenberg foundations, and they are tied to the government and their budget of Sweden. So the individuals of this family can't just take the money that they want and run with it. It's all tied to the state. So they control all education, all companies basically.
Did you get nervous when you were researching this?
Nah, but I found this the instrumental people in taking out the king, also Gustav Vasa, they were a descendant of the Wallenbergs also. Those it's so plain and simple. I wasn't, researching them because of, today. I'm not so interested in about today's situation. Of course, I keep track and so, but I my interest grew from the more mythological and historical aspect with the pagans and the Templars and the Freemasons and aristocratic families and all this ancient history, you could say. But it sort of led up to today, and then when I found out who the fuck killed or destroyed the Vasa dynasty, and I wind up with this Wallenberg, and there are more actors in there.
There are more
But
actors.
yeah,
I just found this out the other day. I just put out an episode today, and it has to do with Italy, Rome getting together with the Jesuits and killing Abraham Lincoln.
mm. Yeah,
For
but
example, this kind of stuff does happen.
this is interesting about America. There's a story in Book Saga about the Templars, And they are quite short on it, but they say the Templars was created by the original pagan families to continue their conductivities underground, to meet in secret meetings and so, and to conduct business. And those networks in the 1500s, they took power back in England and in Sweden. The British and the Swedish were really close. And later on, probably France, maybe Denmark. I don't know really, but 100% Sweden and England. And after that, their influence grew really. You can see like the British Empire really taking off also. And
That's the Bank of England.
but then you had the French Revolution, and they went after all those aristocrats because to be a member or part of this Templar system or the Masonic system, you inherit the titles from generation to generation. You cannot like become the Grand Marshal just like that. You have to inherit those titles. So they went after the aristocratic families. And you can see the same thing happened in Russia also. Yeah, not to mention Russia and Sweden was really close also via this Templar network. Even though certain kind of conflicts, I think it's more like for the population control. You know, there have been conflicts between Russia and Sweden. I think it's more for political purposes, you know, like more härska genom att söndra, vi säger, divide and conquer.
Sure.
Uh, but I'm not saying that they are good or bad. I'm just, but they say that when the French revolutions and the Civil War happened, those Templar networks they moved over to America from Europe
Hmm.
because Europe was sort of lost, and there's this new power system, power was installed there in Sweden also with this Wallenberg sitting there and what else? I don't know, but
The Wallenbergs were not associated with the Templars. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think not. So Templars is more like a when I'm talking about Templars, that's like the original.
Yes.
I think those you can see that those orders has been infiltrated. Gustav Adolf the Third, Gustav the Third, he was killed by an order. We have three orders: the Seraphim, Order of the Seraphim, and Order of the Sword, and Order of the North Star. And there was a masquerade on the castle in Stockholm, and there was like five guys from this order, his own order, who killed him. So the order had been infiltrated.
Yes.
So we can see that there are infiltration and those kind of things. So I think the network sort of collapsed, but those networks today are still running and they are operating all over the world.
It's hard to say who's running them though when they've been
Yep.
infiltrated.
Yes. It could be whatever, you know,
Yeah.
what you see on the surface, like the Wallenbergs, they are merely industrial. You know, they are the economical people, you know, they are running
On the
the economic.
surface.
Yeah, they are running the economics, but who
But who
knows?
knows? Yes, who knows what all they've got their hands in behind the scenes.
Yeah, and what other people might be their masters, you know. They could be some other, we don't know that. There's
Yeah,
like this like this layer.
The Wallenbergs could have been infiltrated as well, in a way, right?
Well, or they could be representing another power network
Yeah.
or be a part of another power network. And I think that's if you know to look at the world when you see like conflicts in the media and you have all this kind of shit going on, there's always like this skepticism that everything is like a circus or a theater, you know. And I don't know about certain things. Like in America, I trust that there was an organization that have a good intent, because if everyone had a bad intent, we would be a much worse state, I think. Our freedoms and, if you really think about it, we don't have that bad. We still have some
Mhm.
freedom and we still have some opportunity to do. It's not that totalitarian in the West. If you compare to like what happened in Russia with the Soviet, I even heard that Putin and this is very bad also. But I don't know. But there must be some good forces that want humanity to raise or to, because there are definitely forces that have very bad intent, I would say. But if it was only bad, we would be in a much worse state today, I think. So I don't know. This is where speculation comes, really. But there's a conflict going on in America when it comes to identity and what's like, there's like a real crisis in America,
Yeah. Yeah.
with
There's
the
it's
going,
I think it's divide and conquer as well. I think
yeah.
that there, when you look at the identity crisis here, it's fueled by issues like gender and homosexuality and all that. And abortion is another one. And it's like these issues do not have any bearing on everyday life. They're not as important as they're made to be. So but what purpose they do serve is they divide society.
But there are players like, you have this Kennedy
Yes.
Jr. and you have this what's he called? Oh,
Are you talking about?
Jordan Peterson. I don't know.
Yes,
I've
yes,
been,
Jordan Peterson.
and
Yes.
you have Graham Hancock, and I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, when I listen to those people, I'm like, also they don't divide and conquer in that sense.
No, no, no.
I mean, it's how the fuck those people even get a platform if it was all bad? I mean, I'm not saying that they are all good, but when I listen to like
There's
this
still
Kennedy,
some freedom of speech. That's how Jordan Peterson gets by.
I mean, also this Kennedy guy, he seems to be a really good guy. I mean, in that age, you don't have much to lose. That goes with Trump also. I don't know about this guy, but maybe there's also a part of the establishment. I don't know, but I think it's still interesting to have that
The broader point of
possibility.
the broader point of what you're saying, I understand. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. It's like if it can't all be bad because the world isn't burning.
Well, they want to end wars. And I know that America is so tied to wars economically. America
Yes,
would collapse if it was world peace economically.
sure.
That happened to Sweden in the 1700s. We were fighting those wars. There was a time when Sweden was a great power in Europe, and it was only driven by continuous wars. When Sweden stopped having those wars, it collapsed and we shrinked. Our nation became, we had parts of Europe under us, parts of Russia today, all of Finland. It was a really big country.
Hmm.
And all that collapsed when we stopped having wars. And ever since then, it has only been proxy wars. You can see in Ukraine today, Sweden is instrumental, a key component in driving that war. We are making tons of ammunition. Like in the Second World War, we were selling ammunitions to both sides of the conflict, and giving selling in like technologies, and we're funding both sides
Well,
of
that's
the
why
conflict.
wars are so profitable. That goes back to your point about America being propped up economically by our wars. Yes, we have a military industrial complex that continues that cycle. But why? Well, the why is because there's people up top who benefit financially from war, mainly because they fund both sides, like you just said.
Mm. But to have people coming on up running for president who want to stop wars, I'm like, that's a good thing.
Where, here or there? Where's that
Yeah,
happening?
in America.
Well, so they all run on that platform. They all, before they get in office, they all say that they're going to end the wars, and they don't.
Yeah, there's always like a complication, right?
Yes, yes,
But if they really want to end the war, or they do, that would be a really good thing. But it will be
yes.
consequences for America also. That's for sure.
There's a rigged system here to an extent. There are certain things that you, for instance, you cannot be president in this country unless you are involved with the military industrial complex. You have to be a warmonger to be able to hold office here. So, last time they got somebody in who didn't want to do wars, that would have been JFK. He was against the
Mm.
Vietnam War. They killed him.
Yep. This
But
is interesting too. You can track the assassination back to Sweden actually.
that wouldn't surprise me at all.
This is the same time when we had a president called Olof Palme. He was
Yes,
also he
he
was
was
also
assassinated.
yep. He flipped. He was a part of this. He was all over the world. He was hated by the Americans. He was like what you call a communist almost. But at the end of his life, or the end of his like reign, he sort of flipped. He wanted to, I don't know in detail what happened, but his assassination with JFK are really connected. It's like the same actors or what do you call forces behind the assassinations.
I remember the guy you brought up earlier, Michael.
Michael
T-
Tsarion.
sorry, yeah, he said something around about Jesuits may have assassinated this Olaf guy.
Olaf. Olaf, yeah, yeah,
Olaf.
yeah.
And
Okay.
it just it just all this sounds like this episode I just released. So it's synchronistic somewhat to me because I just put out an episode about the Jesuits being involved in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And so that has opened my eyes up to see that there are these bigger forces at play here. There are people in other countries who behind the scenes are making these big power moves that affect us, that affect our government here.
Hmm. But this is like this assassination thing. This is also like a little. It's a trademark. If you look back in history, also like the assassination of Gustav III is also assassination. But I never heard about we doing those kind of or the more pagan culture. They do more like they have other tactics. It's like a trademark with this assassination. The Hashashins. It's they're this is also a rabbit hole to go into, the assassins of Syria. There's like an order of Hashashins, the users of
Yes.
hash. This that they sell all over the world now with I think it's more like the Muslim. I'm not saying that the Muslims are bad in that sense, but they bring the hash,
Sure.
those Syrian, more Middle Eastern uh, cultures, or you could say.
Hmm.
They bring the hash. It's a good. You cannot smuggle the weed in its original form that good. So this little tiny
Yes.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's
Yes, I do. It's been alchemically reduced down to like a paste.
there's actually a movie that I thought was really interesting. It's basically assassins versus Templars.
Do you think that the assassin culture or the assassin history goes back to the Middle East and then
Yeah, I think so.
somehow it was adopted by these powerful families along the way?
Or that they took power up here.
Yeah.
Because even though they don't look Middle Eastern, they mingle in, I know there's a place in Russia where they unofficial they said that they had to have a like a religion so they could choose, and they chose the Jewish. So that's
Yes.
how you got
Yes, they
the white Jew, because the Jews, they originate from India. The Roman, or the, we call them Romer. That's like the original Jews. They are Gypsy Jews. Gypsies, they are called.
there's a lot of mingling, and that's to borrow your word that you just used. It's they mingle, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I brought up the Etruscans earlier, because apparently the Etruscans were the Italian Empire before Rome. But here's what's interesting. This is why I wanted to tell you about it. Etruscan was a Finnish language.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah.
here they are running Italy, right? So how does that happen? And then there was a guy who found a mummy in Italy, and the mummy was wrapped in one long continuous piece of cloth. But as they unravel the cloth, it's covered in language, and it's a long story in a type of Finnish.
Well, that's not surprising.
So
I
you
can say
have,
it like this: the languages today are more scattered and fragmented than like 1,000 years ago. They are the languages are growing. That like for example, like 10,000 years ago, maybe we only had like 13 languages on the planet. Well, of course, there could be like offshoot groups with different kind of dialects, but both the Danish and the Swedish and like the Germans, those are all the same language group that are really close. I can intuitively understand German really good, and Danish I can understand when Danish people speaking, because I have what they call like the root language, or it's the Germanic language group. And according to the Book Saga, there are only two language groups on the planet, and the Finnish language is part of the second language group, which is not the Germanic. So it's, I mean, if you know both Finnish and Swedish, then you have a really good uh, capacity to understand all languages on the planet. And if you look at like the aristocratic people, especially like Eric the 14th, he was the king of Sweden in the late 1500, beginning of 1600. He knew like 15, 16 languages, all based on this all knowledge of language. It's, if you, I don't know how to put it, but if you have like the basic understanding of the constructs of the languages, then it's quite easy to figure out the rest, because the counting systems and everything is just like the structure in itself is very similar. It's not
mhm.
like a made up language that is completely different. It's just, look at Tolkien. He created a bunch of languages, so he must have bestowed or come to some kind of realization how to construct the language. And that's what the Finnish mythology is all about. How to, why the language look like it is. Why does this word sound like this?
Yeah, and the Finnish mythology is very reminiscent of the old Etruscan myths as well. So it seems like all this stuff is connected. And the uh the Kalevala, is that how you say that?
Yep.
That you mentioned Tolkien, he was into that as well, right? We've
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
brushed over that, but what do you think he took from that?
The figures. For example, Gandalf. Gandalf is what you could say Lemminkainen perhaps, or
Yeah.
the wise one. You know, this story of the Santa is also coming from Finland. The Santa Claus
Mhm.
living up on the North Pole, getting letters from his people, you know. That's actually a story in a book saga because when the Catholics came, they went into exile in the very north part of Sweden, and he had his sled that he went around, also Ukko, Lemminkainen. When he gets old and the next generation take over, he becomes the great, as the grandfather, the allfather they call him, because it's his family ruling those 12 sons and 7 daughters. When he gets old and are complete making this family, then his title becomes Ukko, or the Allfather, and he's the last line of council. But he goes around with his sled, and it was pulled by 8 goats. But now when he went up to the north of Lapland, he had those reindeers that the Sami people have. We have a Sami culture up here. They are actually coming from Tibet,
Mhm.
and they are brown-skinned, brown-eyed people who are living still up here. But they have been sort of massacred lately, or not lately, but 16, 1700. That's another story, but their culture is still around, and there are remnants of them. It's like Tibetan people living up here in the
Incredible.
mountains. Yeah, and they cultivate the reindeer. So when Lemminkainen and his family went into exile in the far north of Sweden because of the Catholic takeover, he was getting letters and gifts from, the people missing him in Finland. And I think that's where the story of the Santa Claus living, going around with 8 reindeers and his sled up in the Arctic in exile.
But it used to be goats, but because of these people from Tibet, it became reindeer because
Yeah, they were more
they
suited.
introduced reindeer to the region.
Yeah, they are still living off the reindeer today.
Yeah.
Also, they are having herds and they come south in the summer to feed and so, and then they go back up. It's a still a conflict about that with the land owners, and so now the reindeers are coming and trashing our woods again, you know.
I
So
see.
that's a political, thing
Eat.
even today.
You just have to eat them. That's more food on the table.
Yep, but it's interesting.
A reindeer stew.
It's really good. It's expensive though. I prefer the elk though.
Yeah, I eat a lot of elk. I love
Me too.
elk.
My brother is a hunter and my father, so I'm more of the fisherman.
Yeah. I like fishing as well.
Yeah,
I like how methodical fishing is. You can go and fish, and it's a totally different pace. You're not
yeah.
relying on your instincts as much as you are when you're on an elk hunt.
Well, it's a lot of knowledge also. I remember when I was a teenager and my stepfather, he had also a stepfather, and they were from Stockholm, and they used to bring me down to Stockholm and wanted to go to all those museums and stuff, and I was like, I was intrigued, but I was, you know, I wasn't really ready for it, to be that kind of interested. But my grandfather, he living just next to the ocean, and he goes fishing all the time. So I've been going with him all my life, and I remember so well. He's like, "Oh, it was autumn, and now it's full moon. Now the fish going to the shallows, they go up and breed on those shallow shallow points in the deep ocean. The schools of fish, and they only do this in the full moon in the autumn to breed, and that's a good day to go fishing.
Sure.
And this knowledge I was so amazed about. Okay, he knows that during full moon, blah blah blah. This nature knowledge. This kind of knowledge struck me much harder than the knowledge of historical stuff in Stockholm.
Yeah.
So he asked me, my stepfather's stepfather, he asked me like, who's the biggest like role model for you? I'm like, my grandfather, of course. But he's not rich, he doesn't have much money and so on, but I don't, that's not the point. So yeah, I think it was just a interesting aspect because a lot of people they take role models from those people who earn most money, I think, maybe.
Yes. Yes.
But I always treasured like nature knowledge much more. It's so eternal.
Yes. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a grandfather who taught me some nature knowledge as well. And it's a different kind of knowledge than what you're getting in university.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this. Have you heard about Victor Schauberger?
Yes, I've been thinking about doing a show about him. I know about him. I don't know much. I know that he was this nature guy.
Water wizard, they call him.
Yeah.
He's like, I remember this story from, I know that his son is have a museum for him and has been talking on like podcasts or have been doing some kind of interviews. And he said like when Victor Schauberger he was making those uh, what do you call not a railway but those passageways for logs. He constructed those. They during the first World War they needed to uh, cut down a lot of forest deep into the forest, and how to transport the logs, away from the forest. It was a big problem, very costly. And Victor Schauberger, he came up with this. They make like tubes or what do you call? We call it renna. It's like a yeah. Anyway, he made this system because he mixed like cold water and warm water for different kind of purposes. So those logs went into the slides and never hit the walls. And they were amazed how he was managed to do that. And there was like this university professor that was joining out in the forest because Victor Schauberger, he was this forester. He worked in the forest all day. And this university guy, he wanted to join him for a day, like out in the forest and see what he was up to. And they came down to a stream and there was a trout there. And Victor said to this professor, like, now, professor, if I scare the fish, which way will it go, downstream or upstream? And the professor said, oh, it will go downstream. And Victor, when he scared the fish, it went upstream. And then Victor said, like, now, professor, why did the trout go upstream? And he had no fucking clue. Yeah, that's not nothing you teach on the university, right? But there was something about the form of the trout and this electromagnetic streams that are flowing upstreams that
Mhm.
the fish is like swimming in.
Mhm.
And there's something when it's thunder, after a thunderstorm, it's really good trout fishing. I tell you, because the water gets neutralized, so they can't access those streams for a while. So they get really tired and need to eat more.
Yes, that's a very good example of as above, so below, because with the birds, it's a very similar story. Many of the birds respond to an electromagnetic
Yeah.
wave in the sky.
Yeah, when they the seasonal flights and those.
Yes.
But this is also like if we go circle back to what we talked about in the beginning with Udenma or Helsinki, the electromagnetic poles of the planet, they end up somewhere. And in the before the first Ragnarök, they say that the absolute North Pole was Helsinki. And it's also tied to the flight of the soul. They burned the people when you died, you burned and your ash was scattered underneath the oak tree. or the ash tree if you were Auser people, like to say. But that our souls went with those magnetic streams towards the North Pole. And there you have this Valhalla Lemminkainen temple complex where the supposedly the soul went in and sort of refurnished and came back again. So I think that's why this culture of mummification also came to be, because they wanted to preserve the souls so they can burn them later when the planet was healed again. Because when the ice sheet was covering the entrance to the North Pole, then they wasn't really sure about if the soul was going back to Valhalla. So
I
and
was
the sim
studying
yeah.
something recently where I found some very similar knowledge to what you're saying here, where the North Pole represented a portal for souls. And that's just what it reminded me of. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I was just if we could we look at a picture of the rune stones from Gotland?
Yeah, I'll see
I don't
what I
know,
can do
but
here.
to put something into a more visualizing format could be really nice. Those rune stones are made by the Bock family when they were staying in Gotland. There's a cave called Lummelunda Grottor, Lummelunda Caves in Gotland that you can go and visit. And the inside of this cave, they found this very unique rune stones, picture stones, that are a museum in Stockholm today that you can go and watch. But they incorporate a lot of the pagan traditions and so that I'm talking about.
Do you
Even
see
like, yeah, I see it. Okay, we can see here.
which rune stone?
Oh, look at the one to the left there. There's a couple of them.
The top left or the bottom?
I'm more interested in the one behind to the left. Do you see the spiral there? No, to the left. It's the left corner of the picture. The Viking runestones of Gotland, it says. History hit.
Yeah, this one here.
Yeah. You see the spiral one to the left there?
Oh, yes, I
It's
see that.
behind.
Yes, I see that.
It's too bad we can't see the entirety of it, but
There's a bigger
yeah,
version.
yeah. You see there, there's this spiral going
Yes.
towards a point. That's the symbol of this vortex,
Ah,
magnetic, and the middle point there is the Valhalla gate, or the origin, or where it goes. I think that's why we have so much Ouroboros up here too. It has to do with this magnetic storm. Now this
is it
current
like
has
a big
moved.
swirl of energy?
Yeah, going towards there because all of their rituals are so tied to this. They all the breathing has to be done there because when you breathe in the soul, and when we breathe, also like you know, uh, not the breathing in itself, but when we take in oxygen into our lungs and we, you know,
Mhm.
this it's called andas. And ande is spirit in Swedish. So every time we take a deep breath and breathe out, our ande is, it has to do with our spirit. So this is very connected to a very like spiritual understanding of how to connect like the journey of the soul and all of this with rebirth and maybe reincarnation in that sense. Not like that, but I don't know exactly. That's where we go into more speculative areas. But to only see those pictures and to try to understand what they mean, it becomes so clear when you have the more understanding of the book saga.
Yes. This it's called a mandala
Yeah,
here.
Can we see if we can find some more stones? There's a one stone that is really, if you go down, that's that's a really good one.
This one here.
Fabulous old photograph, ancient rune stones.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a copy though. But there you have the lancier. You see the guy with the lance on the horse there.
Yes.
That those are not symbols of war. It's a symbol of status.
Hmm.
The lance is a symbol for a breeder, a lancier. They have they have a spear that represent their purpose in the culture. And the shield is also not warfare. It's only symbols for different functions within the pagan system. So everyone thinks like, oh, this is warfare, this is about killing people, but it's actually about making people. So all those kind of artifacts or symbols that they are carrying on those pictures has to do with a status symbol.
And you also have a boat here
Yep.
and the waves beneath.
There are seven figures there, I think.
And there's a lady or a figure here of someone holding onto this box underneath the waves.
It's
So
very serpentine too.
yes, it is. I was gonna say it's very
But
like
if you go back and if you go back to the first one we looked at,
okay.
there you have the hexa or the witch.
Was it this one?
Go back even more.
All right.
I should have prepared with some of those pictures, to be honest. If you go back to the other tab there you see in the middle, the red one, the picture we looked at the first time.
Was it Viking Norse
No, no,
runestones?
no. Yeah,
Oh,
the
yes.
Viking. There,
Yes.
you see the central one, the red.
Yes.
See, you have a girl holding two snakes there,
Yes.
and you have this tribal
Hmm.
treknut symbol, which is very. In this story, the female was the ones that sort of made a narrative for the year. The they came up with the future stories, the females, and the tribal symbol. It's a symbol of the structure of the separation, you can almost say, or the structure of the, because you have three balls. As a tri-ball means like three balls. You have three spheres, one for the men, one for the females, and one for like doing things together. So it was very like put into category. The men had their knowledge of sphere, and the female had their own knowledge, and they didn't know anything about the other, but they worked together in a tribal system. And the female was really the ones that handled like the culture or the program
Hmm.
for the coming year. And you can see this woman there, the hexa, holding two snakes. It could be like the two Ouroboros or there were two kind of offering systems, and the offerings have to do with you offer to the moon and you to the sun. There were two kind of systems, so that could be tied to that. I wouldn't say for sure, but it's interesting. There's a lot of female figurine within the pagan system because the
Yes.
females had real power. There was,
Like Valkyries, perhaps.
yeah, not, they had their functions. That's all I can say, but it was like 50-50. The men and the females were equal in that sense. There was not like there was one guy like a king controlling everything. There was always an opposite on the female side,
It reminds
balancing
me,
it.
yes, yes, it's all about balance. It reminds me of the 12 Valkyries who were the female keepers of the moon calendar.
Never heard about.
Yeah.
But
It's
this is the thing about the Norse mythology. The most of what we were getting fuel with is like the Viking shows I've been big critic of. and this portrait and image that the media and the Hollywood is portraying about the Vikings is so distorted and so far from the truth. Of course, there are nuggets of truth in it, but most of it are based on the Icelandic sagas called the Eddas, which is written by a priest. So already there from the it's on more on and also the problem with texts over time is that it's so easy to if you say that you find a text that is 1,000 years old and you want to translate it, you're gonna have your modern mind, your modern associations tainting it. Because if you, that's what I see a lot happening maybe with the Egyptian and everything is supposed to be like aliens when it's maybe not so much alien into it. Because the modern mind wants that disk to be a UFO or some kind of super advanced technological device. Maybe it was a technology. I'm not saying that they wasn't advanced in the technologies, but we interpretate stuff according to our worldview, and the worldview has changed. That we can notice some people walking around today have completely different worldview than maybe you or me. That's all I'm saying. The problem with
The,
texts is
the
that they tend to be corrupted over time because you need association in the brain to maybe understand what they even want to say. And with the book Saga, we get the worldview. We get a worldview and we can look at it objectively. Okay, they think this. Okay, nice. Then when I want to interpret a stone or trying to understand what a stone means as a rune stone, then I can apply my book saga view worldview on it. I don't need to become the worldview, or that's it's a foundation for it. So that in that way we can compare at least if you're at least a nerd in this like me. But that's all I'm saying about old books. It's have to be really careful with the interpretations of it.
yeah, you were talking about the women having power, representing power, and it's represented in the symbology in some of these rune stones here, and it just kind of reminded me of goddess worship, which I would consider to be one of the most overlooked aspects of the ancient world today. In fact, I think much of Washington, D.C. and America are built on ideas from goddess worship. I think our Capitol dome represents a pregnant goddess. And then you see it in your names and titles like America, Amera. You got Lady Liberty. I told you earlier, I have a statue of Athena here in my town. I
But
see
that's
Ashtar all over. But we have a situation today where people watch Netflix instead of reading and they get their mythology from Marvel movies.
you know,
And all this mythology stuff is like a distant memory to the collective consciousness. And it's almost like some of this knowledge today has now just been reserved for the elites and for the secret societies and for the nerds if you want to go look for it, right? But back in the day, this information seems like it was in the hands of the common people.
yeah,
And
everyone knew.
yes, and they used
Like
the
in India,
mythology along the side of they used it alongside of the seasons and the stars, and it helped them to navigate. It helped them to build their cities on waterways and knew how to use those waterways like highways.
just look at the India. They have a living mythology still. They know about Krishna. They know about Shiva. They know about all those in the pantheons. It's still living, but it's a cultural and traditional aspect into it. But talking about Athena, I've been to Greece. I went to Greece last year. I'm going to Greece actually next the coming week again to Athens. And what struck me in Greece is that almost every statue are demolished except Athena. And you have the temples, the on the Temple Mount or the Acropolis, uh, Acropolis, or what is it called?
Propolis. I imagine that that is symbolic as well. But finish your point.
Why? I'm when you're saying about that there's a statue of Athena in America, I'm like, okay, because there's something. I know that Michael Sarian has made a work called The Female Illuminati. There, he has
Yes.
a
Yes.
there's something about this Athena character. They want to rule out every other aspect of the pantheon except Athena. And now
Yes.
you're talking about this Athena statue also in America, but like it's no coincidence that
It's not a
almost
coincidence.
that almost every statue in Greece is demolished except the Athena statues. So it's something weird going on there, man.
There's something going on there. Yeah. I see that. I would love to do a deep dive on Athena. That would be
Yeah,
a great episode, I think. And
I need
yeah,
to research that.
well, these all these goddesses, they also have they're cross-cultural. So
Yeah,
Athena, well, I'll just use India for example, because you said India. Athena in India probably has a different name than she has in Greece.
but she's also the tapestry. She make those big. When you what is called not carpentry when you make those huge almost like a wallpaper of a story, like a Renaissance picture.
Mhm.
In Greece, they made those with cloth that you could hang on the walls. And there's a story about this was really interesting, so symbolically. The Nobel Prize dinner last year, or I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, they played this song about Athena getting upset because there was this village girl that made those tapestries much more grand and much more beautiful with a different narrative than Athena. So Athena had her killed. But this peasant girl who made those beautiful tapestry, she was also making with the motives of the old gods or the
Mm.
it was a different narrative. But this is actually a Greek mythological story when Athena gets upset about this peasant girl making much more beautiful tapestry than Athena. So Athena have her killed. This girl, I don't remember her name, she becomes this spider that continuously making this spider web. I thought this was when they had this incorporated into the Nobel Prize dinner as some fucking like, and you should see the Nobel Prize dinner. This is like the echelon of power, having the
Yes.
kind of pompous with the finest foods and all the world leaders, even the head of the Bank of America was there.
Yes.
And you have Wallenberg sitting there also with this huge gold medallion around his neck. And our Swedish king is sitting in the middle with no decoration at all. And those Wallenberg running around with like fucking medals and so pompous, friends with everyone in there. And if you have time, 5 hours over, watch one of those fucking Nobel Prize dinner if you have this kind of.
I imagine it's a lot like, well,
It's so symbolical. Everything
bringing
is
in
symbolical.
they're bringing in the mythology though, like they do with the Olympics.
Yes, the Wallenbergs, they were the one who brought Greek mythology into Sweden in Swedish format.
Mm.
I don't know why. There's something with this Greek this Greek thing that they are
Yes.
going for. And when I went to Greece, I couldn't find one gold object, not one single gold object. They have must been melting down every fucking thing. It's so plunder culture. It's so sad to see actually. But if you go to a museum in Sweden, there's so much gold objects you can watch. And I think that's a really indicator if it's a plundered nature or not in that sense. It's just weird, man. I don't know why they even keep those old artifacts because it's, yeah,
This is
we're,
the picture of the statue of Athena here in Nashville.
look
This
at
is
that.
Now that's very much zoomed in. Do you see the chest region? She's got a little
Yeah.
face. She's got the, for lack of a better term, mohawk type hat on. Let me see.
I think
There.
Athena really represents like the
Yeah, okay,
media.
look at this shield.
Oh,
Finish your thought.
no,
Sorry.
I think that Athena is really a symbol of the media or the information, the narrative, the worldview. Like she's the one who makes the tapestry. It's like the image that is portrayed out. I think she is like a symbol of media and the colonization of mind almost.
This is in Nashville, Tennessee. It's very out of place, or it is today. Maybe at one time, this was not so out of place. I don't think they're telling us the truth about why this statue is actually here.
Well, they want to colonize the America with the not physically but mentally, and I think Athena might be a representative of that.
This is, but everything about this is so symbolic.
Yeah, of course. I love this kind of also symbolical journeys you can go to. It's a real trip, man.
There's,
If you ever go to Sweden, to Stockholm, it boggles your mind. Everything is symbolical. Everywhere you go in Old Town, Sweden.
it's the same as Washington, D.C.
It's amazing. The only difference is uh, in Stockholm, it's mostly coming from the between 1600 up to 1800. It's a different kind of style. It's more Gothic,
Mhm.
not this Greek. Uh,
That is the strangest little face she has on her chest.
the blue eye.
It's like this all over the world. It's just,
Let's see if I
eh,
find it a different kind of motif.
but I'm gonna have to wrap this up soon. So
We could spend hours looking at this.
yes, I was gonna say the same. I could continue going if it wasn't so late. I would, but
There's so many aspects that we haven't gone into that I would have, but maybe we can do a follow-up sometime.
we we can do a follow up. So don't feel like you have to squeeze everything
The
into.
problem with this is that there's so many points you want to cover, so I have a tendency to end up all over the fucking place.
No, that's okay. It's okay because the more the conversation continues, the more some of those ideas start to come together. The more you find yourself at a place where you can say, "Oh, we're at a crossroads here," or this information relates to this information. It's one of the things I've found out that happens when I podcast. It's like I'll talk about something and it's like this version of talking, this free form type of talking where you're almost just, I don't know, you're channeling words straight from your mind and it's just coming out in free form. And I find that I work problems out on podcasts. I figure
Same here.
things out.
That's why I never want to have like people who I've been doing podcasts with want to have like talking points, and I'm like, well, I prefer not to.
You're certainly not a talking point guy. I picked up
No,
on that.
no, because it becomes much more organic if you.
Sure.
But of course, it can be a little bit messy for the listeners. It's not like watching a structured documentary. That's why I'm having a hard time even making a documentary because I want to go into everything. So I end up with like a 20-hour documentary in the end. And then, I don't know, but
What's your
just
documentary? What have you been working on regarding that?
uh, the fall of the Vasa line and how they got to power. This turning point in history with the French wars and the Civil War and what's happening in Sweden meanwhile. And to tie those connections, what happens with, what is going on.
Hmm.
And to point out Sweden on the map in this conflict, I would
Make it,
say.
put it out on YouTube,
Yeah,
and
but
but don't be so hard on yourself. Don't be a perfectionist. You know,
well, I am
well, I am
sort
too,
of.
but I have to figure out ways to combat that. I have to just allow myself to put stuff on the internet because
Yeah, but that's why I like this, when we
yes,
just speak freely, because it's more like, yeah, I prefer that to listen, if I want to make a documentary, I want to make, I have film, I want to make
sure.
it visual also, so it make justice to it, really.
You might have to go to talking points for the documentary.
I have,
I'm just throwing that out there.
I have a script,
Yes.
not a script in every word, but like certain events, and then I talk about the events.
Mm.
So
You have to allow yourself to put it out.
yeah, that's true. Well, I was the same thing. I'm a musician also. I've been making albums and I play death metal.
Yes.
So, but that involves other people. So I'm more of a guy who works with other people on projects because then I get more like, then you can't be that kind of, yeah. It's harder when you do stuff on your own, for
Yeah,
sure.
well, sometimes it is. I'm a musician as well. I did that for years. I was in rock bands.
Mm.
I've been playing guitar for like 25 years and I'm a vocalist as well. And the problem I ran into with the bands was having to rely on other people
Yo.
because
You
you
need to,
can't, because at the end of the day, you can only rely on yourself. And when you have four other knuckleheads in this group with you, it's hard to get anybody on the same page.
yeah.
It's a miracle that some of these bands survive with the same members. It's almost unheard of, like the Rolling Stones or U2 or something. They have the same guys somehow that they, you know, it's the same core group of guys that were there in the beginning. And that's remarkable. It's almost miraculous.
But they were, I think the recipe is they have a structure. Like Rammstein, for example, they were really in the beginning they were having, they made this kind of structure that, we don't drink when we play.
Yes.
They have certain rules, and I think that rules that is instrumental.
Well,
And I
that's what
think,
you,
oh,
yes, that's what you have to do, not to just tell you what to do, but I feel like that's instrumental in putting content out there or making a documentary for YouTube. You have to almost give yourself 3 weeks and say, this time, 3 weeks from now, this is what I'm going to have accomplished.
hmm, yeah, exactly. Or at least that you take some time off to just put focus on that, maybe put into your schedule.
I
Yeah.
like some Swedish metal. I like Amon Amarth.
I saw them last week in my hometown.
Really?
Yeah. And Halo Effect. There's like the already OG In Flames.
Yeah, yes, yes.
And Insomnium.
What do you think about this band? I may mispronounce it. E
Healing.
Eileen, Eleine.
I never heard.
Swedish band. Oh, they may be Finnish, but they've got a female singer,
Okay.
and she's the most beautiful woman in music. Period.
O- Okay. You have to
But
send me a link.
I'll send you a link. It's a Finnish metal band. Eileen, I mean, I like their music. I think it's great. I mean, I like the music, and then I watched the band on YouTube, and I couldn't believe how hot this girl was. This singer is so hot. Uh, do
Have
you
you
know
heard?
Darkseed? Do you know Darkseed,
No,
Germany? Great band.
there are many great bands. I'm a nostalgic. Mostly listen to the bands that I listened to as a teenager. One of my favorites is Winter Sun from Finland. That's a one-man army. Really incredible music.
Winter
Winter,
Sun.
yes.
I'll have to look that up. Winter
It's very
Sun.
melodic. You can hear it's so much soul in that music. Talking about music, just a point. This interesting. That's where my journey really began, actually, with music. How I made this meditation music actually, because I was like, all the meditation music is. I was skeptical to that also, but it it music and color are as a light and sound are sort of the same thing. And I think the universe is constructed by sound
Mm.
in different frequencies. So to be a musician, you are like a master of the universe. But we are missing out so many notes and so many sounds in our sound spectrum in the music today. So it might even be a bit harmful. If you go out into the nature, you hear sound from birds and all kind of things all the time that are different kind of vibrations than what is coming out from the radio. It's like what is it? 440 is the bass.
Yes, 440 something hertz.
Yeah, and I made this wheel based on I had this equation, but it's basically the color wheel, but in many nuances that is going through. It's called the Inner Music. It's on my YouTube channel. You can listen to 2 hour. It's flipping. I only listened to that for a week as an experiment, and
Oh,
my
I
mind
know.
fucking blew.
I think I listened to that. Did you use the black sun symbol in the
Yeah,
background?
yeah, yeah.
Yes. That's really good. It's really good. I've heard that because I knew about you from your YouTube channel.
Mm.
So I've seen most of your videos and I did listen to that music and it's very mm, it's not I don't know if you would put it on for bed. I think you would put it on
No,
for in the morning for meditation or something.
it's very. It gives you energy instead of
Yes.
sleepy. I
It's
mean, as an experiment, I just canceled out all other sound inputs and only listened to that. And it was then I really took off as it's powerful stuff.
yes. You know, when I was a kid, I could see colors when I listened to music.
Well, it's even the scientists say that sound and music and light is the same thing. It's connected. I used to
It's
make those
connected.
soundboards, but it's you put like a note and the correspondent color to it. So you can like because you have the if you mix certain colors, you have complementing colors. It's just some of the same what do you call pattern in it.
I really miss that ability though to and I'm with you 100%. I do think that they are connected, but you know, I miss that ability to be able to because what I would do was I would go to bed at night and I would put especially classical music on. If I'd see the colors more more when I listen to classical.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
could I could lay in bed at night and listen to the classical music and I could just close my eyes and I would see colors. And that's how I would fall asleep. And it's like I lost the ability to do that. Occasionally, I'll hear a song and I'll see a color just randomly today.
mm,
But it was something I had when I was a kid that I miss.
can develop it again. Something that I what was interesting about the Vasa family or the Vasa line, they banned certain kind of music that were not melodic. It's like they only allowed no drums and stuff, only melodic like harps and those kind of uplifting, almost like elvish types of instrument. That
They
was like
banned
the
the
theme. Yeah,
drums. Did they ban
yeah,
the
yeah,
beats?
yeah, yeah.
There's a very similar phenomena that happened over here in the South with the fundamental Christians. They will not, or especially years and years ago, I think some of them have become more reformed, but they considered it wrong to have drums in the service.
Hmm. But then you look at the totalitarian states, they only do this more monotone drum beat type music. And that's a theme also in like Lord of the Rings. You have the orcs of Mordor and
Mm.
they do this marching drums and shit. Also, then you have the elves only playing the harps and there's a correlation there.
Yeah, there's a correlation there. Yaki, we're gonna have to put
Yeah, yeah.
a bow on this, but this was really good. It was really informative. I enjoyed this type of conversation with, where we just kind of just talked but we'll have to do this again. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, well, it's my YouTube. I think if you look, just Google Joake or Joakim Haggstrom, you can find me on a lot of platforms. I've been on Unslaved, I've been on a couple of times, I've been putting a lot of on YouTube. I'm on Spotify on different podcasts also. I'm quite scattered.
I will include a link to your YouTube in the description for people. They can start there. And also, I'll put your name spelled out in the description. That way, if they click on your name, they'll be able to go and find all the other podcasts that you've been on and stuff over the years. But this has been great, man. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, we'll do it again. And as always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.